Welcome to the I Was Bored stream. I'm sitting down with my friend Repeal, the 20th Century, who has been on before. Definitely check that one out. Anyway, man, how you doing?
Hey, I'm glad to be back on. I really do like going on other people's shows just to talk because I try to approach my show as putting myself on the back burner and letting the guests talk. So I like sometimes having the opportunity to talk myself because
Absolutely.
there's some things I like to have discussions about. So
Absolutely. I hear that. No, I love getting invited to people's podcasts because it's like I can just show up. I don't have to read a whole book beforehand. I just have to show up. It's a lot of fun.
mhm.
Now your podcast is great. You have on a lot of academics. I don't know. Academics, right? What would you say? Because they're all scholarly type people, I would say.
Yeah, I try to create a criteria for who I have on my guests. I want people who have made real contributions to some field, whether it be an academic field or the political field. For example, one of my guests in the next coming weeks will be Jeremy Kauffman, who's running for Senate in New Hampshire and has been a big figure and driving force in the Free State Project. But like people I've had before are mostly economists or people who contribute to academic things. Like Pete was formerly of the Libertarian Institute, and he's written books himself.
You and I
If
have
they've written a book, it's a good marker.
you and I have an opposite approach because I would like to my talking to people, but I wanted to get the everyday guy to read academic books and kind of have a place for regular conversation. So you and I have a very similar podcast book. So it's just we taking it the opposite direction, which I find really interesting.
Sure. Yeah. I actually I love watching how the layman, so to speak, talks about various topics. It's just I think there's plenty of avenues for laymen, and I didn't want to, encroach on those because there are people I think who do it better. But I wanted to, take an approach of really interviewing people who have made some real contributions to various fields. An episode that will be coming out next Saturday, not tomorrow, is with David Friedman, and
Nice.
very,
Yeah.
yeah. I felt a little out of my depth because I hadn't read anything by David Friedman recently, except for I skimmed his article on Austrians beforehand while I was at work, and somewhat watched his debate with Walter Block. But I think he had interesting things to say.
I don't know the debate happened. I'll note that down for later.
Yeah, no, I highly suggest watching it. I mean, um, based on what I saw, though, I think Walter Block definitely won that debate. Even though David Friedman has interesting critiques of the Austrian school, I think a lot of it is, though, in that he is also, in addition to being an economist, he's a physicist. So he's very much I hate saying that we have certainty of things. I like saying that we're uncertain about things because really in the fields of science we are very uncertain about most things, especially physics. In fact, physics is very paradoxical most of the time because we've gotten really good at about telling people what's happening, but not why it's happening. We still can't do that for a lot of stuff in physics.
There's a lot of this is photos. I saw music in there. It was a CGI drawing of how cells reproduce or something, and someone said, "Keep in mind, all modern science is CGI."
Yeah.
Which I'm sure it's not 100% correct, but it's a fun little. It's a window into what's a lot of it's happening.
Yeah, I mean, people like to think science is a invaluable thing, and it really isn't by definition an invaluable thing. And it's an ever-changing thing. So the CGI analogy is really good, especially with the way that CGI has developed over the years.
And we all know CGI started to fake the moon landing. That's just a known.
Yeah, that is a confirmed 100%. That is one of the things we are certain about in life,
Yes,
is that the moon landing was faked.
I actually have a guy coming on in a few weeks to come on and because I really don't care about most conspiracy theories about moon landing and dinosaurs. I could care less about. And so it's fun. I like to talk because it's like, if it's true, it's true. If it's not true, it's not true. I'm not in any of those fields, so I don't care. But it's fun to hear the arguments for why those things aren't real. And so I'm gonna have them on in a few weeks to talk about it.
Yeah, I saw an interesting argument that those kind of conspiracy theories are really like psyops, like that the state invented them as a way to like discredit the idea of conspiracy theories and discredit people who are skeptical
That makes
of
more sense to me.
of like the mainstream narrative,
Mhm.
which I think is pretty compelling considering what we know about the word conspiracy theory in general, and that it came into popular vernacular because of memos from the CIA to journalists of all things.
And
So
the Kai Kalinske has that same take about conspiracy theories being psyops, all about Alex Jones. I think I saw some of Kai Kalinski's Alex Jones take it that he is a psyop. Which I guess that's one way to describe. That's a weird way to try to. Has liberal ways of discrediting people go? That's a weird one. I actually kind of respect it. Like, if you have to discredit Alex Jones, you're not going to compete. He's crazy for us. You can't beat him on the facts. But it's trying to convince the right wing people he's just there to actually be a psyop. That's pretty convincing.
yeah, as a former, well, I shouldn't say former because I still like Alex Jones. I'm not like I don't watch Alex Jones like I used to when I was in high school.
Yeah, I think
But that is probably more convincing to his fans than saying, oh, he lied about Sandy Hook or he lied about whatever. Is saying that he is a psyop.
It's like, oh no, a news guy lied. That's all they all do. It's like, it's not like convincing. No, Guy Golinsky is a weird one because as left wing people go, I can stomach him more than I can stomach other people. You know what I'm saying? I can stomach him.
So, I have a very interesting political journey, and when I was in middle school and early high school, I was a leftist by all accounts. In fact, I called myself a Maoist.
I
And
asked why Maoist as opposed to other kinds of Marxism type things.
So the reason was because I still am a big avid consumer of history, but at the time I started consuming books about Mao. I was watching videos about Mao, and I was like, "Man, this guy seems really cool. His ideology must be cool too." And
this is what happens to right wing bros and Hitler.
Yeah, exactly. But so at the time I had very left wing inclinations because I was a middle schooler and going into high school, and I was like, yeah, it would be great if everybody was paid the same amount, and if everyone was equal and stuff. And I was like, and look, there's this guy in China who did it. His name's Mao Zedong. He totally achieved this society. And but eventually I realized that was all bullcrap and total nonsense. But in that period of time, I was also a militant atheist, and so I got around to Kyle Kalinske. I watched Kyle Kalinske pretty regularly. I found his channel actually, ironically, through Amazing Atheist, who was someone I watched a lot too when I was younger. But yeah, I think Kyle is somebody who very much examines the broken clocks are right twice a day. He had a really, really good take on the Canadian trucker situation recently.
And he's good on war stuff. I've noticed. Like, he's pretty good on, like, I think him and Dave Smith have a really good conversation. They want to sit down.
Yeah, he's been pretty consistent on war. Actually, I think he's gotten flack from, I think they're his former employers now, the Young Turks, for that, because the Young Turks are very flip floppy on war, like a lot of progressives. But yeah, Kyle has some decent takes. It's just that he is so wrapped up in the progressive ideological bubble that he there is no escape for him, there is no hope for him, kind of thing.
I actually was just talking about that whole bubble on my podcast before this one. We talked about how the liberal syndrome, as Burnham calls it, people who are stuck into it. Like even people like Brett Weinstein and Eric Weinstein, who literally had their work squashed and stolen by academics and the institutions, and they still defend said institutions.
I think a big part of it is when you live in a city, it's unavoidable. You it's being left wing or die kind of thing, because every institution is left wing, and the way that cities are set up are designed to create left wingers essentially, because by sheer fact of that there is this immense population density. It is impossible to know everyone in your community. It is impossible to have a real meaningful connection with your community, and these things create progressive ideology and create progressive mindsets. Further than that as well, it also creates horrible conditions, and bad conditions can create progressives a lot.
Yeah. Isn't that the thing? Like Mises said, narrative interventionism. Like you intervene, the government intervenes, it gets worse. Therefore, got to intervene some more.
Yeah. Actually, my favorite thing to poke out from that, I also bring out when the usual suspects are like Mises was very left wing actually on social issues. Is Mises accusing Adolf Hitler of being a homosexual because he was in public housing?
I love it so much.
Public housing does create progressive ideologies and progressive mindsets.
Mm-hmm.
So he was pretty right on that, especially what we know about the Nazis now and their rather degenerate behavior in the higher ups.
I'm reading Socialism now. I'm trying to get Thomas Siddle into the come on for us. We scheduled, and he I don't know, he missed my email. He missed a reminder email to come on, which sucks. But I'm gonna try again because I want to talk to him about socialism.
Yeah, Di Lorenzo's great. I met Di Lorenzo this last Mises U. I knew about Di Lorenzo though for a while before that because of one of my professors in my undergrad. My first year of undergrad was at George Mason University, and there's a professor there named Thomas Ristisi who used to be really big with in the Mises Institute circles, but some personal beef that I don't know all the details of and are honestly pretty irrelevant. He kind of distanced himself, but he still talks to several people, and one of those people is Di Lorenzo, and he actually assigned as a required reading a Di Lorenzo article on monopolies that is really, really great. It's called Competition Except for When Competition Except for When Prohibited by Law. I really suggest reading it. It's a really good one and talks about the problem with antitrust laws and how they actually de-incentivize competition, not incentivize it. It also has a lot of good commentary on the Gilded Age and stuff. But yeah, I knew about him from that, and then when I met him, he's a great guy. I like to say he's the most based boomer because he has really boomer talking points when he's going.
He's hilarious. His boomer humor. I mean, the environmental communists are watermelons because the green outside running. I mean, he's with people. I put on his podcast, Di Lorenzo's podcast with Pete Quinones on the World Economic Forum for my dad. I work the other day, and my dad was loving it because he's also a boomer, which is why he's great.
Yeah, no, I mean he knows how to appeal to that demographic because he is that demographic. But he is a smart guy, though. A lot of people were giving him a lot of crap at Mises U because of one of his lectures. They were like, "Oh, it wasn't very good. It was ranty," but I thought it was great. Which you can go watch it on the Mises Institute's channel, and all their Mises U lectures are on there.
When they were live, this last time I was at work the entire week, and I had the live stream going in the work truck the entire time.
Oh yeah.
Like I was like, I couldn't go. I'm not missing this.
Well, if you watch some of the panels, you'll get to see me ask a few questions.
Nice.
But I'm hoping to go there again this year. Mises U is a really great experience, and I highly suggest it. Even if you're not in the field of economics, which is not a requirement, nor is it completely just about economics. It's skewed that way to a big for most of the or a good portion of the lectures, but there were plenty of people who were not economics majors or even that super interested in economics who went and had amazing time. One guy I met on the shuttle on the way there, I mean, he was an architect major, but he's probably one of the guys who got the most out of that experience. So, if you have the opportunity to do it, if you're still a university student, you are really missing out if you don't try to go at least once.
I'm not. I probably won't go to that. I'm not going to any college. This is actually why I started a podcast. Is because I don't like college. I got into every single teacher I had, and I'm like, you know what? I can just do a podcast and have on-spot people instead. And so I figured that was my route because I think people who are in college now, I'm like, Lord be with you, but I can't do it.
Yeah, no, I mean that is a very fair mindset to have about college as somebody who is currently in it and just counting down the years until I'm done with it. It is very much most of the time useless experience, I think. You're really paying for stuff that you can get elsewhere, but you have to get it there because of the way the current system exists. Someone's book who I always suggest is a former professor of mine and the guy who actually got me into anarcho-capitalism in the first place, Brian Kaplan. His book, The Case Against Education, really, really good book about how really education as it is built today is a signaling device. It is not something that actually gives you real skills. It's something that you use to tell employers that you're conscientious, that you show up, and you can do basic tasks. And the more education you get, the more you're showing those things. But you're not really actually getting these skills most of the time. There's a few fields that are exceptions, but these are the academic fields, which are not the vast majority of people. The vast majority of people are in things like business or accounting or all these other kind of things where really you could replace it with, an apprenticeship, for example, or trade school or something like that, where you actually are learning these skills. And he argues that the education as it is a whole problem.
I just downloaded the PDF because that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it's a really good book. It's one of the first libertarian books I actually read.
We're gonna have to do a podcast on that one.
Yeah, I really, really like it a lot. I've actually done multiple presentations in multiple different classes on it. Just whenever I can ham-fist it in, I do, because I think it's definitely one of those books that if a person can actually digest it, it knocks a few other dominoes out. And it helped me get to where I am now. Now I have my criticisms of Brian Kaplan, for sure.
Isn't he an open borders guy?
Yeah,
I don't know much about him, but
yeah, so he wrote a book called Open Borders.
Great title.
Yeah, and it talks about open borders and how he thinks it's preferable, all the standard economic arguments. And he's had a debate with another GMU professor named Garrett Jones, which I also suggest checking out that debate, and Garrett Jones himself, because he's an interesting guy. But a lot of people skew Kaplan to be super, super left wing, but this isn't the case. You would think so because he's for open borders, but I can assure you he's not. As someone who's been to his house, he's got, the traditional medieval banners hang up. He's a collector of Western history. He's a big admirer of Western history. He has a big family himself. He actually wrote a book called Selfish Reasons to Have More Kids. And basically the whole book is arguing.
Every book you've mentioned, I'm adding to my reading list. These all sound great.
Yeah, no, Kaplan's a great guy. He's not perfect on everything, but I will defend him against the hordes of people who are like, well, I saw open borders, so he must be a leftist, and it's like, no, he's just got one bad left wing opinion. But I promise you, he's
And
really
it's for
great on the right.
economic reasons. I mean, if you're gonna have an argument with open borders, economic reasons are the only acceptable one. I guess you could say. I mean, I don't think it's a great argument. I'm still not for open borders, but
Yeah,
seeing how they go.
he's also someone. So most open borders people dismiss concerns about culture and cultural things. He is not that way at all. In fact, some people, when they see him argue about that, they accuse him of being in favor of an apartheid state, um, because he understands these criticisms and he wants to address them. I don't think he sufficiently addresses them, but he attempts to. He doesn't ignore it. He doesn't pretend like it's not a problem. Um, so I have to give him a lot of credit. Unfortunately, he doesn't do it in his book Open Borders. His book Open Borders is all the economics arguments, which most people have heard a million times before, and they're either convinced or they're not. And you're not. I don't think he was convincing anybody by writing Open Borders, honestly.
So back to being, you said you were a Maoist in middle school. Let me ask you a quick question about that, because some communists say Maoists aren't Marxists because Mao added things to it to mix it with the Chinese religion ideology. Do you have a take on that, or are you kind of too young to really notice the differences?
So at the time, I didn't notice the differences, but going back, I definitely noticed the difference because Mao wanted to preserve some Chinese cultural institutions, and that's what really set a difference between him and the Marxist schools of thought before him. Uh, he was in some ways a traditionalist, um, and so I think there is some value in Mao over other Marxist schools of thought because of that. Now, that doesn't make Maoism a good ideology or anything. In fact, it's probably one of the worst of the communist ideologies for a number of reasons. But there is something there. There is meat there, versus someone like Kropkin, who is just a whiny child complaining about the problems of the world and saying how my utopian vision can solve it. I think a lot of people forget that besides Marx and people like Kropkin, a lot of communists were realists. They just were wrong. They were just wrong about things. And that gives them actual weight and valid insight into things that we really should consider and make their works worth reading. I mean, I'm a big proponent of reading Lenin, particularly because I think it's important to read the works of people who actually achieved things.
Yeah.
So, Lenin achieved something. Niccolo Machiavelli achieved something. Hitler achieved something. Mussolini achieved something. All these people achieved something. They all had pretty terrible ideologies, except for Machiavelli it's arguable, but they all had pretty bad ideas on how to fix society. But they had really good ideas on how to achieve them. They did achieve them.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to kind of look back at their works, see what they did, and see how we can replicate that without losing our ideology in the process.
If anybody listening wants to listen to some stuff from them, Pete Quinones and Bird Arcus have a great series when they read different Marxist work. I think I saw about listening to that. Like, that sounds really stupid. The communists. Gave it a try. I couldn't stop. I've listened to them all twice. They are ridiculously good, and it's amazing how much things you can kind of read. Like, since Marxism and communism kind of like was the defining ideology for a long time, and a lot of Austrians, so I feel like it's kind of born out of retaliation to that in some ways. And so I think there's a lot of like Austrian civil libertarians is born out of retaliation to that. So understanding that, if only better understand what Austrian stuff is responding to, is valuable. Like, there's a lot of good reasons to read communist authors, even if they're wrong.
Yeah. So what put particularly Lenin on my radar was there was a club at George Mason University, and ironically, when I was president of the Young Americans for Liberty chapter there, which I have plenty of thoughts on that too, if you wanted to go into that
I would
later.
like to go into that later. Yes.
Yeah, but one of the clubs that was ironically the closest to us was a club called the Platypus Society, which is a Marxist organization, somewhat of the Trotskyite line, but the Trotskyites that didn't become neocons. And I would attend their meetings, and their whole meetings were just reading different works by different Marxists, particularly Lenin. And I was fascinated by it, and I was interested by it, and I really connected with the works. And the president, who I still consider a friend, he's the one who said, "Read State and Revolution by Lenin. It's really good." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I read it, and I loved it. And it's very up there for books that I love. And yeah,
I'm sure the guy out here whose two favorite books are How Was Democracy God Despair and State and Revolution by Lenin.
Yeah, no,
I'm sure the guy exists, and I completely understand where he's coming from.
Yeah, I mean they're great. They're both great books, and there's Democracy, the God That Failed has what State and Revolution is missing, and State and Revolution has what Democracy, the God That Failed is missing. So I think they're really good companion books, honestly, in a lot of ways. But yeah, so we were completely alienated from other clubs on campus, including college Republicans. And so we found a lot of like common ground with them, and even planned to do events with them. And they were cool. They were cool people. And I suggest looking up their newsletter. Yeah, it was. We did get accused of horseshoe theory because we were allied with them. But yeah, no, they're cool guys.
That's like I know people say we need to have like a new John Birch society. But honestly, if we can get like a Mises Institute kind of young guys mixed with like a Trotsky communist group and have like maybe a new John Birch society between those, that could be a lot of fun too. Like I would go those in a heartbeat.
Yeah, well, something particularly I was always thought was interesting about Platypus Society is their motto is "The left is dead, long live the left." And what they mean by that is true leftism is dead. It's gone. It does not exist in this country. And they're right. The left that we have now are essentially controlled opposition for the current regime. They don't realize it, but they are. And the true leftist thought, while it is wrong in my opinion, is more worthwhile, has more contributions to society, and was more of something than the current left wing. And I found that was very interesting, especially because the president, who is a president of a Marxist organization, voted for Donald Trump, particularly because he knew that a victory for Hillary and a victory for Biden is a continued death of the left. If he wants the true left to come back, you need these people. You need people who are on the right.
This guy sounds fascinating.
Yeah, he's a great guy. And I haven't talked to him in a while, but a great guy.
This is making me want to try to find some good, like, my problem with communists is there's some communists who are like just tankies, like Boss, who aren't really, I wouldn't even say as a communist. And then you get like these people you describe, and I actually like, no, I could probably talk to this guy, have a good conversation. It's find those blossoms in the sewers that is most communist online.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, another communist that I think has like worthwhile contributions online would be Infrared. He's from that meme, the Mongoloid meme, the "I am a Mongoloid, that is what I am." He's from that, and that's from his debate with a neocon, which was really great, the whole thing. because it's part of this strain of thought. Oh, the British Empire will come back. The British Empire will come back. We need the British Empire so we can invade other countries and civilize them. It's foolish thought. And the British Empire, I think, has done more harm than good overall. But he also debated Vosh and other people, and he's got a lot of interesting things to say as well. He actually put me on to reading some Hegel, and particularly some ideas I've developed about the master-slave dialectic, which he brought up in his Vosh debate because he was saying Vosh is like a controlled opposition leftist because he votes for Biden and he votes for mainstream Democrats, and he doesn't realize that politics is a battle between masters and slaves, and you have to be willing to put your principles and everything on the line, to sacrifice them at the altar, in order to achieve victory. And he's saying Vosh is not doing that by voting for Biden, which
And
is
he's
true.
right. I mean, everything you just said. I mean, I could make that same argument for my hobby, and like, that's interesting. I'm looking. Like, what's the name one more time? We gotta go down.
Infrared.
Okay, info. So let me just write that down.
Yeah, Infrared is his name, and he debated Vosh. I think he debated Destiny too, and I think he may have debated Hassan, or Hassan talked about him.
Well, that's the trinity of cringe leftists.
And ran away. Oh yeah.
I mean, God, I can't.
Yeah.
Just say that. I'm waiting for my drink.
Yeah, he's one of the few left-wing YouTubers that I think actually produces good content. The vast majority of left-wing YouTubers are these controlled opposition left-wing YouTubers.
Yeah.
So,
and I don't know, if I say I have all my friends are. It's my light here. Okay. All my friends IOL or how to put this. I understood them better after reading Suicide of the West. If that kind of puts you in a mindset of where what kind of people these are. They're all. One of my friends says he's a libertarian, but he believes in positive rights. So it's kind of like, no. But it's like actual. I don't know. It's like I wouldn't say if they were actually left wing. I feel like they were actual. You're describing. I would have fun with these people. But instead, I'm having to say like, no. If you took your ideology seriously, we'd agree on things.
Yeah, no, that's for sure the problem with most of the left today is that
they're not left enough. Which is hilarious to say that, but it's true.
Yeah, it is. That is the problem, is that they're not left enough. So I don't know what the solution is because I'm not in the business of wanting to save the left. But there are interesting people who are trying to do that, and
there are. The mainstream people who want to save the left is like Eric and Brett Weinstein, and they speak about the left as if they're embarrassed by it, and it's just, it's No, I'm not looking at that. Like, to save the left ideas and these people. Okay? After reading Suicide of the West and feel like I actually understand the liberal mindset more, I kind of want to go deeper into some other left wing people. Like, read more left wing stuff because my podcast is all right wing books. So I got a stack of like hardcore paleo right wing books. And for half the year, I might put together half and just do a bunch of hardcore Marxist left wing books and have a split year. It's be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I highly suggest reading left wingers. There's only so much you can delve into though, where until you get to them repeating themselves or the ideas just being complete garbage. Like for example, I think it's only worthwhile to read like one Cropton book, and that's Conquest of Bread, and that book's terrible. Like even just from a writing standpoint, it's not very good. But you get that window into really the modern left in general too, because I think he helped define the modern left a lot, into basically being these people who react to things that are bad and just whine about it and get really utopian about it, because fundamentally he is a utopian, and while he claims to be a continuation of Marx, he's more of a continuation of the utopian socialists, if it who were complete whack jobs. Some of the craziest people ever. Mises U, they tend to have a lecture that mentions that stuff, and it's really good. I think it's on the history of economics with Salerno. So I suggest checking that out as well.
Man, you're filling up my notebook here. I only got too many. I legit have to go to a new page. It's also because I write gigantically. But
yeah, I do a lot of reading and watching around too, and I like to just reference those sources, then try to butcher explaining them to other people a lot of the time. So yeah, I can give resources after resource for plenty of stuff. Yeah.
It's like talking to the last page of a book where it says auto citations.
Yeah. Well, I tend to accrue citations a lot because I like to have them for future reference. So
this is actually one of the reasons I buy books instead of just listening to Audible, Kindle. Is I got to about 2 months ago on Twitter. I was debating some guys from the Claremont Institute about Thomas Steele-Winds's book, and it helped to actually have the book in front of me and not have to go online trying to find the page number to make my arguments. It's really the only reason I buy books. I have an audiobook. I have an audiobook of this one. I own a copy just so I can cite it later and that kind of stuff. So it's good to have those kind of like access to citations, But I don't agree with like citing your arguments or just stand on reasons. I see that some people have to have cites for things, and so I understand it, get it.
Yeah. So something that I get a lot of shit a lot whenever I post my bookshelf online, because the first thing their eyes are attracted to is the Ben Shapiro books I own. I own some Ben Shapiro books from that phase.
I got what is that? How to Show America in 3 Easy Steps, right there.
Yeah, I own Bullies and Primetime Propaganda. And
I didn't mind Primetime Propaganda for my read it online. It's got some good points.
So yeah, they're not bad. They're not. I wouldn't say they're great, but they're not bad in the points they make. But the reason I keep them is because Ben Shapiro is really, really good about accruing sources, specifically sources from left wingers, and he allows left wingers to make his point for him. And these particular topics, it really helps because a lot of people are just saying, oh, you're fear mongering about Hollywood being full of leftists or whatever, and it's like, no, here's from the Hollywood leftist's mouth. It is left wing, and there is a lot of debauchery and degeneracy and disgusting things going on, and unethical practices that really have been ruining the medium in general, specifically with film.
I was just watching, like, you talked about on Twitter about like Peacemaker. Like that one pissed me off. I have never seen a show wait to the last episode to subvert it. And it sucked. I felt calm. They suckered me into promoting the show. I told my friend, like, it's not that left wing. It's not that, it has its points, but it's not too hardcore progressive. And you can enjoy the show, not feel like you're being lectured to. And in the last episode, it made me feel guilty for supporting the show. It's clever. I can't not respect it, but I hate it.
So what Peacemaker showed to me is that a trend is brewing, specifically among comic book adaptations, that they take characters that were villains in the comic books and then flip it on their head and make them the good guys to commentate on some kind of socio-political issue from the left. So the first time I can really think about it happening was with the Skrulls in Captain Marvel. The Skrulls are bad guys in Marvel.
Yeah.
They are 100% bad guys. They were created to be bad guys. They do bad things.
Secret Invasion was all about them being bad guys.
Yeah, about them wanting to take over the earth by, subverting it from within. Like stereotypical bad guy stuff. They were sometimes made to be somewhat sympathetic, but like never that they were good.
Yeah.
But Captain Marvel changed that on their head and said, actually the Skrulls are the good guys. And some people are like, oh, but they made the Kree bad, good guys. The Kree were always bad, so that's not right. But the dichotomy in what was an interesting relationship between the two in the comics is that both of them were bad, and they were both fighting each other while also fighting Earth. And but they decided, no,
That's just too complex.
actually, Skrulls are refugees, which they are refugees in the comics, but of they're still an empire. They're not.
Yeah.
They're not. You know, they're only refugees in the sense that their original planet was destroyed. They still take over other planets. They still have other colonies. But no, now they're completely refugees and they're just coming to Earth to be safe, and they want to make peace and all this crap. And it was obviously to comment on the refugee crisis and a place I used to work at called 71 Republic, which was a alternative media site. Somebody wrote a really great op-ed on how it kind of mirrors the Israel-Palestine issue, but I don't think it was based enough to do that. But now with Peacemaker, we have the same thing with Butterflies. Butterflies were villains. They wanted to take over Earth by controlling all the humans.
But they were doing it to help us because we take actions to help our health as a tax on our freedom.
Yeah, it's
so
both
bad.
commenting on COVID and climate change because they can't decide which is worse or what's
and populist leaders.
Power.
You listen to populist leaders instead of the experts. They literally said populist leaders instead of the experts. That was like I never seen one go that outright with like modern times. Sounds like never seen superheroes go that direct with a modern times commentary.
Yeah, I'm actually even surprised they said the word libertarian when they said
proto-fascist libertarian idea.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Because libertarian never gets thrown around ever.
Yeah.
Like even Ron Swanson, who is the famous libertarian in media, not once in Parks and Rec does he say he's a libertarian or anyone say he's a libertarian. Yeah. No one ever says that. He just says things that are vaguely libertarian and content. But with Peacemaker, again, we're seeing this thing of we're going to turn villains in the comics into actually they're doing good. But Peacemaker somewhat redeems itself in that it just says, oh, that's great and all, but we're going to still kill you anyways, which I liked, but combined with the other ideas, it was a very muddled episode. If they didn't push so hard on the ideology on it, it could have worked really well. And if what I thought was going to happen was when I don't even know how to pronounce her name, but Amanda Waller's daughter, when she goes back to her apartment, that somebody was just going to shoot her for like exposing Task Force X. And that would have like really made the show a really narratively and thematically interesting show rather than just vague commentary on climate change and COVID and all this bullshit. And I'm really unfortunate that they did that.
Because so far, until that last episode, the show was even until that one scene, the entire show was like for me 9 out of 10. Like I was loving it. He was great.
I thought it was really good, and a part of that though is I really did love the Suicide Squad from last year that came out in August that Peacemaker debuted in. It was really good, but that
almost Starro became a victim instead of a bad guy.
Yeah, Starro became a victim in that. That was another example of it, and also that movie kind of messed up its thematic themes with its ending too. So what I thought was going to happen was that at the moment when the villains are like being told by Amanda Waller, all right, your mission's done, go to the LZ. I thought, okay, they're gonna go. They're gonna go. They're gonna walk off. They have no reason to stay. They're not good guys. They're bad guys. These are people who are in prison and are doing a illegal classified mission. Um, and then what would have my dream would have been is that spliced in the credits would have been footage of the Justice League fighting Starro. Like this is now a Justice League problem.
That would have actually been
that.
really, that would have stuck to it to keep this thing set up and not come to heroes.
Yeah, and it would have been thematically interesting too to explore that about like they might be doing good things, but at the end of the day, they're not good guys and they're not heroes. They're not they're sacrificial pawns for people who think they're doing good things, who think they're the good guys. And that would have been something interesting to explore. But instead they're just like, okay, now they're just going to be functionally superheroes. And it's like
I gotta say, I did not like how they turned Amanda Waller from Amanda Waller in the first Suicide Squad. I thought was better. In the second one, they made her like she was bleeding from her teeth and screaming. That didn't seem very Amanda Waller.
She seemed almost a joke at some times.
Like the best version of Amanda Waller was Justice League.
When Amanda, I mean, the point of Amanda Waller in the comics and in other mediums is that she is supposed to be the personification of the deep state, really, of unchecked governmental power, and especially with intelligence agencies. But she basically became the butt of a joke in this one, and then also they made the intelligence agency people also good guys, except for Amanda Waller. She's the only really bad one. The rest of them are good. They're good people. They're just in the wrong field, It's like that's foolish.
Yeah, the movie. I really liked it, and then my main complaint with the whole film was they killed the best character in my opinion for a cheap joke. They people haven't seen it. I'm gonna spoil it. They killed off Polka Dot Man.
Yeah,
he had a character arc that was completed. And you're like, I want to see where they go with this, and it's his hero moment. And instead of actually letting him live or have a hero moment, they killed him for a cheap. Oh no! Anyway, like why?
Yeah, because he was actually the only one where it made sense that he stayed, because Polka Dot Man was a villain not by choice but by circumstances, and he wanted to be a hero but he was conflicted on becoming a hero because that's what his mom wanted for him. And then he finally gets that moment, and then they kill him
for no reason. Well, like a stupid joke.
And I think it's because Hollywood doesn't want to have true heroes anymore. It doesn't want to have true heroes, but it also doesn't want to have complex heroes. So now we just are left without the kind of great action that we used to have, that was actually interesting and more than just explosions and hit that marker in your brain and have that serotonin spike.
Let me ask you, what's your take on the new Batman film? Is it going to be good, or is it going to be going to have all the same problems? It's going to be flashy, but lacking any substance makes you want to go back to it.
So Robert Pattinson is a really, really good actor.
Yeah. Anybody listening doesn't think so, watch The Lighthouse.
The Lighthouse and Good Time. Watch both of those movies and realize that he really escaped the Twilight.
The only one to escape Twilight.
Yeah, really the only one to actually escape it. And he's a really good actor. And I think he could really be a good Bruce Wayne. And I think this Batman could be good, but honestly, I'm not doomer about it, but I'm not excited for it.
If it's good, it's somehow escaped the Hollywood complex and ruined things.
Yeah.
What I hope it does. I really hope it does. I want it to be good.
Yeah. Though there's a lot of behind the scenes news that I've been following that is it's not necessarily concerning, but it looks like that shooting is been hell. To summarize it, the director has reportedly said that he will never work with Robert Pattinson again. He's probably not going to work on the other Batman movies he said he was going to work on. And also, apparently, the Robert Pattinson and the actress with Catwoman had a very inappropriate relationship and conceived on the Batmobile.
Okay, for all the problems, he's playing Batman, and I feel like he just I was method acting. And listen,
Yeah.
I have to say, sexual marriage is wrong. I'm a Catholic, that is wrong. Also, doing it on the Batmobile with Catwoman, as a nerd, I can't be like, I really can't say too much about it. You know, I'm a nerd. I have to kind of be like, you go, man.
Some of these things are only at the rumor stage, but they're coming from people who work on set. So, there's a decent chance that all of this happened, and it would be in character for everyone involved. But yeah,
that one again? Who's it? Matt Reeves, isn't it?
Matt Reeves is the director, if I remember correctly.
I'm trying to say, I know his name. What did he do? I can't remember what he did.
You know what? I'm going to check because I swear I remember he did something that it kind of was like, this guy's directing a Batman movie? Okay.
He did Planet of the Apes.
Oh, yes. He did
he did Cloverfield?
Oh, huh.
Okay, this guy's got more. He's got movies. Wow.
He's not a nobody, and
that's a pretty good list too.
As somebody who liked Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, I think it has a chance to be good. Not amazing, but good.
I think Andy Serkis' outfit was okay. I think Andy Serkis' outfit is going to be really good. I think he's going to be the standout. Back from my earlier list, books. You mentioned hero books. What is the most cringe book you have on yourself?
Oh, wow.
I bet you I could top it.
So one book. So there's a few books I have in mind. One is I have a copy of the book God's Not Dead, and the reason for that is because the author came to George Mason one time, and Marcel, who you've had on, who is vice president of the Secular Student Alliance at George Mason. He went to go debate that guy, and he did for about an hour or so. He actually recommended him Human Action because he thought Human Action would make his point for him, which it would have. But the topic was, is God real? That's the funny thing. And so I got a free copy of that signed by him. I have a book that my dad gave me when I was younger called The Pickup Game. And it's supposed to teach you how to pick up girls. My
list, I need to do for the book club.
I don't know. I wouldn't suggest it, honestly. I didn't use like any of that advice, and I haven't had too much of a problem with my dating life, or at least getting a girlfriend, that is. Though I am single now, if there's any females listening to this.
Yes, dude, it's a libertarian podcast at 8 o'clock in the afternoon. There's no females listening to this. It's a Friday night. More doing a podcast.
Even when I had a libertarian girlfriend, she wouldn't even listen to my libertarian podcast. So
that's what you want. You want my libertarian sick who listen to your podcast with you. Okay, so the most cringe book I own is I have a signed copy of Sean Hannity's book on the war in Afghanistan.
Really?
I stole it from a playground. It was it was like Beaver Book Picker books. I saw it when I was like 9. I was like, "Ooh, I walked in with my grandpa." Grab, and I still haven't read it.
Yeah,
but it's actually I think it's right next to It's right next to Enough Already by Scott Holden.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can say something. I am embarrassed by the lack of books I own is I don't own many books on theology, despite the fact that I am have a very increasing interest in theology,
It's hard to
mostly
find good
because
books
of
on
my
theology.
conversion. Well, there
Like I
is.
find ones that are
The
really good.
problem with it is that they're very expensive and thick books, because I think
Yeah.
anything written by a saint is worthwhile and definitely worth reading. Um, but they're
Taking
usually very
aspects on the
expensive.
divine images.
Yeah.
Is a sequel.
And
That
Aquinas
one's
and
probably good.
Augustine, even though they're Catholic saints, are very good like political theory reads too.
Oh yeah.
But a book I really suggest for people that I had to read for my catechism is called The Mountain of Silence. And it's a book that is simultaneously a book on history, political philosophy, and then also theology, all from the context of Mount Athos, which is a monastery in Greece. But besides that, the only other theology book I own is one book from Aquinas on prayer and contemplative life, and a book on parish etiquette for orthodoxy. Otherwise, and also I own a copy of the Bible, and then God's Not Dead, which I don't really consider. Uh, and
My
then
fault.
I remembered I actually own a book. It's a book from the perspective of Islamic theologians, but on like modern issues.
Yeah, my problem with finding theology books is either you find ones that are at the popular level, what's like interesting, but aren't really in depth, or you find the scholarly ones that you can't understand because it keeps on dying. Like, that's my problem with Catholic one. I have a really nice theology book on Aquinas of love, the Bible, and the guy assumes you can read Latin and just plugs it in, no problem. I have to Google Translate and take a photo of it, like translate. And so it's all good books, but finding ones that you can actually like digest is a challenge.
Yeah. I think a good rule is, and this is my priest's rule, is if they don't have ST in front of their name or they're not a priest, it's probably not worth your time. And I think that's pretty accurate. Even for saints that we don't recognize, and even for priests that we don't recognize, just because it is their job to know these things. They may be wrong about things, but at least they can have commentary on it. Not
I will
reading
make one.
them is like is like reading economics books by non-economists.
I will make one amendment for that if you're Catholic. I cannot recommend enough Scott Hahn. Scott Hahn's books. He is a professional theologian, and I think why not being a priest, has raised four. He talked about how funny they have to call his son's father because priesthood. But as lay people go who are going to commentate on things, he gets a pass because he was like friends with the Pope. So it's kind of like, okay, you wrote, as the Pope has wrote a simulation of his theology. You kind of slide into that door. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think there are some exceptions to the rules, and from what I've heard of Scott Hahn, he's definitely an exception to the rule. So yeah, I don't think it's a set in stone rule, but yeah, I think it is a very good, especially if you're just getting into it. It's better to read the church fathers, and hear it straight from the horse's mouth rather than what people who are trying to sell you something are saying, because none of these books were written to be sold, particularly because there was no market for them. The only people reading them were monks.
Pretty much. So where were we at? We were at movies. Before we were at movies, we were at your idea. Y'all. You're talking about y'all. Some young Americans for Liberty stories. Let's go into that, and after that, we'll wrap it up.
Sure. So, as many people know, they're with Yale right now. There's a lot of controversy over it. I just had Reed Cooley on, who was the former vice president of communications, I believe, if I remember correctly, which I knew Reed beforehand through Yale. I used to be an employee of Yale about a year or two ago now. And The main controversy with Yale right now is it begins back in spring of 2020, I believe, when Yale 2 happened. Basically, Me Too for Yale. A bunch of people came forward and said that they were sexually assaulted at Yale events by Yale people, which I don't think is entirely not possible. As someone who's gone to Yale events, it's not like, and it's not because there's something particular about Yale that would increase sexual assaults or the culture of Yale. It's it's a campus organization. Unfortunately, this is what happens, and I never looked into whether or not these allegations were true. I never looked into it very much because I didn't want to get wrapped into it. I was already not an employee of Yale, so it wasn't that big a deal for me in the sense of like I'm not going to dedicate so much time to discussing this when there are other things that are, I can actually do about, because my position at the time was this is an internal issue, let the board of directors handle it. And I was confident because the founder of Yale was really a Ron Paul guy. I mean, Yale used to be students for Ron Paul when he was running for president. So flash forward a few months later, Cliff Maloney, the former president, is let go. I think another person, I think Justin Maloney, was also relieved, and he was like a vice president because of these allegations. And they installed a new president who is named Lauren Daughtry. She used to work for Nick Sarwark. She was a big member of the LP of Texas. Not a great candidate at all. A
You
lot
just
of people
listed the two
didn't like
biggest
her,
reasons to like not hire one.
but people were pretty confident it wasn't going to be that big a deal because it seemed her approach was to step back and let the people who had been there go and kind of just be a figurehead. And it almost seemed like a PR stunt to like, we just had a big problem with women. Let's put a woman in the shoes and, try to ease this PR nightmare. But then Lauren began giving orders on messaging that really watered down the messaging a lot, really brought it down. Complaints about stuff like, let's not criticize Kamala Harris. She is the first woman of color vice president. Um, oh, killing civilians in drone strikes is rare. We shouldn't bring that up. We should, be honest. Or I really think Liz Cheney is brave for all this. And it's like, people in Yale were having that problem. The structure of Yale, who was hired, was changing a lot. A lot of people were getting hired from LP of Texas, a lot of people she knew. And Yale kept changing and changing and watering it down. And then it came to a head when Reed was fired for not performance reasons, but because of these messaging conflicts, because she thought the messaging was bad. And what we know now is that it was upheld by the board of directors, including the founder, which means that even he is compromised, and that really it's a problem of Yale is broken from up down all the way down. I still have friends there who are great people, and I would never disparage them. But as far as I can see, Yale is pretty much a lost cause unless it can radically change itself, and I don't see that happening. But some of these problems you could see if you were a member of Yale or really involved before. Our George Mason chapter got in trouble for some messaging. I don't remember the specific comments because I'm no longer at George Mason, so I wasn't there when the comments were made. But we got an order handed down from National that we couldn't say that. We needed to delete those tweets because they were too extreme. So and I know plenty of people who left Yale over these conflicts and have problems with it. So yeah, I think Yale is unfortunately declined because it really was a great organization, an organization where all the different strategies and projects of libertarianism could thrive and actually succeed. And I would before this whole thing with Reed, I would have nothing but glowing things to say about it, and really encourage people to join it and get involved and contribute. But now I cannot, in good confidence, support it. I cannot, in good confidence, tell other people to support it, and that's a shame because it really did a lot for me, and I did a lot for them, um, and that is unfortunate to me.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
so
I'm new to the space, and I didn't know who they were until maybe that Liberty event in Florida maybe a few months ago. That's when I found out who they were. Like Ron Paul stood up or something.
yes,
Um,
so Yale had when I started doing Yale stuff. Yale cons, there were multiple a year, and then they changed starting with 2020 that they were just going to do one big convention every year. And 2021 was the first time they actually got to do that. Mobilize, which was going to be 2020's event, got canceled because of COVID. And that's actually when I quit, was around Mobilize, just because I could not do it. I could not meet the demands that they wanted, and do everything else I did in my life. And but they were successful with Revolution, and from what I hear, it was a very successful event and did a lot for us. But the problem is, I don't think they're going to replicate that in the future now. Who they're definitely not going to get people like Jeff Dice to come. They're not going to get people from the Mises Institute. They're not going to get people from like Ron Paul. They're not going to get Daniel McAdams. They're certainly not going to get Thomas Massey, and these are their big names, because they've alienated them and they've alienated the movement, and that's unfortunate.
that sucks because we need all the institutions and anything we can. We have losing one that was actually good. Like first of all, a good libertarian institution is already whale, and then to lose one of the good ones when things are really like things gonna pop off next election. We're so pissed with Dave Smith and everybody doing the same and group Public Liberty. Things are gonna pop off next election and they'll lose an institution 2 years short of that. It sucks. It really does suck.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the big questions I got after doing the episode with Reed is, well, what do I put my time into now?
But that's that.
And my answer is I'm not sure. I can give you a few suggestions, but I can't say with full confidence that they're the right way to go or they're the thing to do. I support them, even if it's only tangentially. But so Free State Project's been enormously successful. They've got a good base. They're doing good things. GOP Mises Caucus, I think, is on the right track. I don't know many of them personally, but they seem to be on the right track for doing good things, especially on a local level. Make Liberty Win, which is somewhat of a branch off of Yale. They seem to do good work and are continuing what Yale did best, which was getting state legislators elected who were libertarians. Not libertarians as in the Libertarian Party, but just, ideological libertarians, regardless of party affiliation. And then there's an organization starting called Mises Youth that could be promising. But other than that, I mean, if you want a really for sure thing that is good, donate to the Mises Institute. I donate every month. I donate $5, which is basically what I can do because I'm a college student, but I donate that much. And a lot of people don't realize the Mises Institute has a big impact, especially in other countries. And they actually get people elected in other countries, with their other branches. I think Brazil is a place they're actually really successful in. And also just like they provide free resources. The amount of free resources they provide, for example, like you can get yourself a free copy of Economics in One Lesson, or you can ask for a whole case of them, which I did. pass
Same.
them out. Yeah, I pass them out. I've actually given away, I think, all but one of them now.
I have two left. I have one personal copy, and I have one more one to give out. But
Yeah, and even that goes a long way, and they're very, very, very supportive of the movement in so many different ways, academically, practically, and so if you absolutely need something to give money or time to, that's a libertarian cause, and you want one that's for sure, the only one I can give my glowing recommendation to, because I know personally, is the Mises Institute.
order more, please, says Emo Hoppian. Um,
I do plan to order another case because uh, I was able to give them out at my parish and it was pretty successful. And I was able to give them out at my college Republicans and it was pretty successful. And so I want
my
to try
parents, my
other
parents,
places.
my parents are sort of 80-year-olds, so I'm not. I don't know if they can read anymore. So I'm not going to. But not everyone listening. Yeah, like I think so. Bishop said it once. Like, imagine giving money to the Libertarian Party, give money to Mises Institute. Just give money to Mises Institute. Like, support them. They are literally the best institution. I would like the two institutions that I respect. It's the Mises Institute and the Catholic Church. Those are the only two
Yeah.
institutions that exist that I actually respect. And I guess like, I don't know how do I classify all the orthodoxies? Because I know there's a bunch of different like hubs. Like, so I don't know how y'all branch out your set.
So the easiest way is to just say Eastern Orthodox, I would say. That's the term that is all encompassing for the most part. Some people like to also say OCA because OCA is Orthodox Church of America, but OCA is somewhat and somewhat not its own sect. So there are OCA churches, but really the difference between an OCA church and a different ethnic church is that an OCA church, there isn't enough ethnic people in that territory to create a specific ethnic church, so they all just
I
branch
noticed
into one.
a lot of I've noticed about orthodoxy. It seems to be ethnic. How to put it? So in Protestantism dominations, and Catholicism is like your Roman Catholic, Eastern Rite Byzantine, that kind of stuff. Orthodox seem more ethnically based, whereas it's like this
Yeah,
Greek,
so
there's Muslim. Like, how does that work exactly?
so basically, a lot of the conflicts between different Orthodox churches are very much ethnic based and come from their culture, um, and how their culture interprets certain ideas about Christianity. And so that's where most of the conflicts come. And then some of them are completely invented, like the conflicts between the Russian and the Ukrainian churches are almost entirely fueled as a petty rivalry fueled by the State Department. And in all honesty, um, just as the conflict between Ukraine and Russia is the same way. It's you know it's just a petty rivalry that is being inflamed by outside sources, when really they're not different in almost any way. Um, so I think that uh, Orthodoxy doesn't have as much a problem though with not cooperation between the sects. Like during Pascha, which is our Easter season, we have pan-Orthodox services, which are multiple churches doing one service together. So, and it comes from all different denominations. I think the only Orthodox denomination that we're not in communion with and therefore don't do that with is Coptic Orthodox, and I don't remember the reason why.
You Orthodox, you guys stand during the mass during the services. Is that right? Or am I saying something else?
Yeah, we stand for the majority of it. So the rule that I have been told by an older member of the church is, when the gate is closed, you may sit. It's not encouraged to sit, but you can sit during that. But when it's open, you must stand up, and you must stand up during when the Eucharist is being given. And so that's how our services work. Sometimes also we do prostrations at specific parts during it. So you get on your knees, you bow down, get back up, and do it again.
Or the chairs, or do you guys? I saw some photos of and Orthodox too. That's not
So
Chicago. And I was like,
it
I didn't see any sales.
it depends on the church. Some churches have pews, some churches have chairs, some don't have anything to sit down on, but a lot have been trending towards having something to sit down because a lot of older members and they have to have a place to sit.
Yeah.
You know, so we're not completely rigid and understanding of people's circumstances. It's just we try not to let the exceptions dictate the rule.
Yeah.
Which I think is a problem in other Christian sects, particularly Protestant sects.
Yeah. It's we gotta have a we need to do once you're fully in Orthodox, we gotta do a podcast on a Catholic Orthodox take on Protestantism. You know, to do a not too hardcore critique, but more just like a where we think that. Because I have friends who people text me and go, "Hey, what exactly difference between Catholic and Protestant?" And I'm like, "How much time do you have?" Like,
So
I mean, it's varied.
I think honestly, someone who would be better for that is Buck Johnson had on a longtime mentor and role model of mine, Father Ignatius, um, who is the husband of my old debate coach. And he is someone who I can connect you with, who I think you really should have for something like that, because he, if I remember correctly, is a former Catholic priest and also Anglican, I think, priest who converted to Orthodoxy, and his episode with Buck is a must watch, I think, in terms of podcast episodes. Like, Buck did a really great job having him on and also just asking him questions. And I mean, Father Ignatius is great. I love that man like a
I
father.
watched the podcast; they're very good. He seems like a very cool guy.
Yeah, he is, and I just, it was funny too. Like right after that episode came out is when I went and saw him when I went down to Texas for Christmas. So, yeah, great guy. I highly suggest watching that episode. I mean, I suggest watching Buck's show in general. Buck's show is pretty good.
I love him. He's a great dude.
Mm-hmm. But that episode specifically, if you're not going to watch any of other Buck's episodes, watch that one.
That's one thing I'm trying to do. I'm trying to reach out to a few Catholic priests that are Dominicans, get them to come on with some Aquinas books. Like I have a policy: no Aquinas books if I'm talking to a Dominican, and no Mises books if I'm talking to a Mises Institute scholar. Those are my two requirements. I wouldn't want to have on, the guys who represent those books best for those books.
Yeah, that's a good tactic, because especially with Mises books, because Mises Institute scholars can have read these books so many times most of the time, that having anyone else, you'd be doing disservice. And I think the same is true for theological books, with priests and monks especially. One thing that I know we mentioned earlier, Jay Dyer does well, is that he has a lot of priests on and he has a lot of monks on, because he's able to find those who are willing to go on. Despite my problems with Jay Dyer, which, I can still enjoy a lot of his content, but I think he's too abrasive when it comes to theology and acts too much like an authority when he's been Orthodox 4 or 5 years, which, the rule is typically you're not like an experienced Orthodox person until you've been in Orthodoxy for 10 years. So
yeah, no, I've tried to watch some of his content, but I watched him do some debates, and when he cuts the guy off doing like the guy's doing his closing statement, he cuts him off in a closing statement. I'm just like, okay, I'm out. I don't want to watch. I just of all the time to cut someone off, the conversation's ending. You want to inject more stuff during his time. I just made me immediately lose all that. Okay, no, I can't. I don't want to associate.
I will say,
he's got good content. I'm sure he's got good content. That many subscribers, but I just can't.
the best of Jay Dyer's content is film commentary, actually. There's really good film commentary into the themes, especially his Eyes Wide Shut video, which was referred to me by a friend. really great video, and a really great analysis of Eyes Wide Shut, which is also a great movie.
I've never seen it.
It's really great. It's by Stanley Kubrick, the guy who did The Shining, which a lot of people don't realize. Stanley Kubrick was a pretty libertarian guy in a lot of ways, and his films reflect that. A lot of them do, like Paths of Glory, Full Metal Jacket, Doctor Strangelove, all really good anti-war films. Though I have somewhat of a criticism of Doctor Strangelove in that he's really critical of nuclear weapons and the existence of them, and I believe in nuclear proliferation. I think more nukes actually is a good thing in the terms that countries and entities that have nukes don't go to conflict with each other like ever, and actually are encouraged to reduce tensions or ease tensions at the very least. But Kubrick disagrees.
I
And
mean, that's really got to be the opposite, isn't it? We're not getting rid of these things.
yeah, well,
there's no disarmament.
Kubrick was somewhat of a utopian when it came to nuclear weapons, unfortunately. But that doesn't make Doctor Strangelove any less great than it is, which is another film I really, really recommend. I recommend basically all of his filmography, at least what I've seen, except for Lolita. Don't watch Lolita. It's not very good.
I don't think I've seen. I don't think I've ever seen a movie directed by him. You guys are all the movies. I don't think I've seen a single one.
Really?
Yeah,
it's surprising because most people have seen at least The Shining or 2001 or Full Metal Jacket, but that's interesting that you haven't seen any of them.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wasn't allowed to watch anything growing up, and so my movie taste is all.
That's fair.
So like now I'm actually able to watch movies. I just saw American Psycho for the first time. And I'm like, okay, I could get into these kind of heavier movies. I didn't, So I'm gonna try. I'm putting my every month to get together for this year and watch a fancy Oscar-bait film, and so I might add those to the list.
Well, I need to do some self-promotion here, in that on my Substack, the last actual article I wrote was a list of films on Liberty War in the state, which is a reference to a Mises Institute list on the same topic of films that imbue ideas on Liberty War in the state, that from a libertarian perspective, or at least that you can come out of with a libertarian perspective. I suggest every one of those films on there. A lot of them share with the list, the Mises Institute list, but I added some stuff that they didn't have that I think really ought to have been there. Especially some more like art house films, because I'm somebody who has seen quite a lot of art house films, and there are a surprising amount where they're actually really libertarian in themes. And it's a list I plan to continually update as I watch more films. There's a film that I need to finish right now that I started last night that I'm probably going on the list, called Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, about a group of British POWs in an Imperial Japanese prisoner of war camp that is really, really interesting and explores the different ideas of honor between the two groups, and when it comes to war especially. So possibly expect a review of that up within the next few days, and also that list to be updated.
Sounds good. Well, we've been going for about an hour and a half. Man, everyone listening, make sure you go subscribe, plug your stuff, and I'll give you a little shout out. Go plug your stuff. Where do you find you at?
Sorry, my audio just cut out for a second. So
I was stumbling all about and stuttering, so that's good. Where do people find you at?
Oh, so you can find me at Repeal the 20th Century on YouTube, Repeal the 20th Century on Spotify, Repeal the 20th Century on Odyssey, also at Repeal the 20th on Twitter, and if there is any, I also have a Facebook page, a Substack's Repeal the 20th Century as well. Same with the Facebook page. There is also some people asked about they've found an Instagram called Repeal the 20th Century. That's true. That used to belong to me. It still technically belongs to me, but it's an account I did with my ex-girlfriend, and she doesn't have the login for it, so it's just kind of gone. Yeah. So, but yeah, all the platforms I mentioned, I'm active on to some extent, and you can find my content there.
Nice. Well, anyway, listen, make sure you go check out his content because the best way to describe his show is he talks to really smart people about really smart topics, and so definitely check it out because it's fun to listen to a podcast where you're talking, you're listening to people who are academics who have added saying, like you said earlier, added things to the world of libertarianism. It's not just some good smart people on Twitter, but it's like this is a guy who went to school. This is a guy who's added saying this is and this is a serious intellectual, and so definitely check out his content. I really enjoy it. So, favorite episode he did though was just people knowing that he was not, didn't want to book or any of this, but that's still a great episode. Yeah. Anything you want to add before you dip out?
I'm just gonna put out that tomorrow I will have an episode out with Christopher Hansen, who is an economist from Leipzig University in Germany, to talk about fractional reserve banking. So expect that out tomorrow. He wrote a really great article at Mises about it in the Rothbardian view. And then next week, my interview with David Friedman, and the week after that, my interview with Jeremy Kaufman.
So I mean, people, tomorrow's episode on fractional reserve banking. I don't even know what that is. So definitely go check it out. Everyone, it's been a great time. Everyone have a good night.